Is GMOs. That's the biggest question that I get on my farm, and the biggest question I get on my Facebook page and on my website. A lot of people ask me what a GMO is. Most people don't know what it is. We all may know, but the general public don't. A GMO is a genetically modified organism. It's also called GM, which is just genetically modified. What that is when they take a plant that grows naturally and they change the genetics of that plant. The most popular GMO is a BT crop. It's grown as soy, alfalfa, cotton, sugar beets, and we don't know what other crops that have been genetically altered. Those are the only ones that the government regulates, so those are the only ones we know for sure have been altered genetically.
All of them!
BT is actually a naturally occurring bacteria that produces a toxin that kills bugs. They put that toxin in the gene of a seed. When that plant grows, every part of that seed has that bacteria in it. It's a genetically altered strain of a naturally occurring bacteria. When that bacteria goes into the leaves and into the fruit, you pick it and eat it. Over time, it builds up in your body. But the strain of bacteria that they use then changes the bacteria that's in your body all the time and creates new strains of genetically altered bacteria in your stomach and in your entire body. Right now, there's no regulation on BT. They can put it in pretty much anything. It's been in existence since 1995 is when they started to recognize it being offered to the public. They then regulated it, did very little testing, and allowed it to be grown and sold unregulated on the market, and those crops among other crops. There's also tomatoes, peppers, eggplant, lettuce, just about any form of produce you can find BT bacteria has been genetically engineered into the plant itself. After they succeeded, or what they thought to be a succession of BT, they came out with Roundup Ready crops, which means you can take glyphosate, which is a weed killer, and will kill about any growing organism, and spray it directly on these crops, and it doesn't kill the crop. How glyphosate works is it's a systemic toxin. It doesn't kill a plant by a chemical burning the plant. It prevents the plant from being able to absorb nutrients out of the soil, therefore they can't grow. But it also, they had to change the genetic engineering of the crops that they spray with it to be able to grow without those nutrients. So for corn, as an example, that's one of the biggest crops that they grow that's Roundup Ready, meaning they can spray Roundup on it. Corn is able to grow without trace minerals, meaning when you buy corn from the grocery store, it has no trace minerals in it because it's not able to absorb and assimilate them out of the ground. Not only does it affect the nutrition level, but it also affects anyone that eats it. The cattle industry has been fighting Monsanto and DuPont since 1999 to prevent GMO corn from being used as a feed for cattle. Because when the cattle eat that, they're not able to absorb nutrients. It prevents the cattle from absorbing nutrients from other foods, grasses and whole foods that they eat. So the cattle can't absorb it either. The cattle industry started seeing a 35% reduction in fertility rates in their cattle. And the reason is one of the first signs of malnutrition in a species of animals is a reduction in fertility. And the reason that is because if there's not enough food and nutrition for the animals that are walking, they don't want to produce more. So nature takes over and starts to reduce the fertility rate of those species of animals. That's why they have a 35% reduction in fertility among domesticated cattle, because they only cattle that eat GMO corn. They also discovered bacteria that has never been identified before. It's a genetically altered bacteria that lives in the stomach of the cattle. When you see on the news that there's a salmonella outbreak or an E. coli outbreak and that people are getting sick and that people are dying from it, normally we have salmonella and E. coli in our system at all times. It doesn't affect us in any way, shape, or form. The E. coli and the salmonella that they're talking about is a genetically altered form of E. coli and salmonella, which comes from the BT bacteria in the corn that the cattle are eating. It then converts that bacteria to a toxin-producing bacteria, which then starts to produce toxins in the body, which can kill you. And that's the bacteria that they're talking about. The CDC has just changed the guidelines of what they consider to be an outbreak. They're now talking about 2 people getting sick from this bacteria as an outbreak, because they're so concerned that it's going to spread throughout the population and start killing people in large numbers, that if 2 people are reported with that bacteria, they start to get really nervous and want to know exactly how it got introduced into the food system. On the other side of it, the FDA knows about the same bacteria. They know about the problems with GMOs, but they won't do anything to regulate them or to label them so you know if you're eating them or not. Which then comes to the new food safety bill. This is the largest regulatory bill ever passed pertaining to agriculture in the history of the United States, yet nobody's ever heard about it. It's a bill that was passed a year ago this past January. They're working to implement it through the FDA. And as part of that bill, it's going to regulate that farmers like myself grow only GMO crops. The only crops that will be able to be grown for resale to the public. And under resale, they also have put the words barter, trade, or gift, which means you can't even give away produce that isn't approved by the FDA. The FDA and the person in charge of approving these plants was a lifetime employee of Monsanto. He was a lawyer, he was a public relations administrator, and he was also a lobbyist for Monsanto. And he's the person that's overseeing the implementation of this bill. The people underneath him, the 7 people that are below him, are all former employees of Monsanto as well. This law, like I said, was passed already. It's not something that we can stop at this point. I've lobbied and tried to educate everybody that I could find for the past 5 years when this bill first came into Congress. No news agency would pick it up. No newspaper would pick it up. Nobody wanted to hear about it. Nobody believed that it would actually get passed. It has been passed. It's being rewritten into a usable law at this point. It's being rewritten by the FDA. They're going to start implementation next year of this bill, which is going to put small farms like myself and even much larger farms out of business due to the circumstances that they have to meet to be able to be certified by the FDA to grow crops that are resale to the public. As part of that, the FDA has to certify these plants and seeds that are going to be grown. The certification process is going to be very similar to the certification process of drugs through the FDA, where a corporation submits a plant or a seed as a potential plant to be grown for food. They're going to bring it before the FDA, have the FDA vote whether yes or no it's going to be approved. This is going to take money. It's going to take thousands of dollars per plant. And the only people that are going to have the money to do the research on the plant, bring it before the FDA, have a hearing done on it, and get it approved are patented plants that you're going to be able to make a return off of. Such as GMOs. The only way you can patent a plant is if you patent the DNA to it or the intellectual back of it. And
Shouldn't be able to patent the plant.
What's that?
Should not be able to patent the plant.
I don't disagree with you, but they do, and there's hundreds of them that are patented right now. And the reason they're patented is because they're genetically altered, and they own the intellectual property behind that.
Behind the plant?
They own the plant. Right now, just 2 weeks ago in Brazil, the farmers in Brazil won a $2 billion lawsuit against Monsanto because somehow Monsanto seed got smuggled into Brazil, which it's illegal to grow in Brazil. And on that note, U.S. and Canada are the only two countries left in the industrial world that allow the unregulated growth of GMOs. Every other country in the world has banned the growth of GMOs without severe restrictions or really harsh regulation and oversight. In Brazil, somebody smuggled these seeds into Brazil, which was a genetically modified soy seed, brought it into Brazil, and how they designed the genetics of the seed is if you grow a genetically altered seed and your next door neighbor doesn't grow genetically altered seed, because of cross-pollination, your next door neighbor's seed, the next crop season, will be genetically altered seed. It's a seed that takes over all other seed in its family. So what Monsanto did is once they smuggled this seed into Brazil, started growing it unbeknownst to the farmers, they converted all of the soy in the country of Brazil to a GMO soy, and then started suing farmers for growing their patented seed without their permission. They started charging a percentage of their crop sale as a payback to them for growing their seed without permission. The farmers got together, sued Monsanto and won, but because Monsanto has the backing of the U.S. government, they're never going to have to pay the $2 billion lawsuit. That's just one instance of how GMOs can take over a crop. In the United States, we're at the point where right now, there is no sugar beet, there is no soy, there is very little corn. Alfalfa is just about taken over as well. And then there's a whole host of production crops, eggplant, tomatoes, lettuce, peppers, squash, that we don't even know if they're genetically modified or not. We don't know if the seeds have already been on the market, and we don't know, without doing DNA testing, if once this law is implemented by the FDA, that Monsanto can come in and demand money from farmers for growing their crop without paying them for the use of their patented seed. This is without question a power grab by corporations to own the food supply worldwide. What they're trying to do is control all the seed and all the food, and therefore you can control the people once you control their food. And they've tried it in India, they tried it in Japan, they tried it in China, and all of those companies, all those countries saw what they were doing and actually banned the growth of them because they knew what they were trying to do is take over their food supplies from within their own country. Most of those countries right now have lawsuits standing against Monsanto. In the United States, just recently, 2 states passed GMO labeling laws. GMO labeling means that you have to label any product that contains a GMO. Both states that passed the laws through their own legislature were threatened with lawsuits from Monsanto and threatened to bankrupt the states, both Vermont and Connecticut.
Wow.
Through legal action, they can eat up tons of money within the state, bring it to a federal court, and automatically win in a federal court because they have the backing of the U.S. government. There's even some of the justices on the Supreme Court are former employees of Monsanto. So the likelihood of a lawsuit going to the Supreme Court and not being found in favor of Monsanto is about 0. So both states backed off completely of the labeling laws for fear of lawsuits that they could never win and paying millions or billions in legal fees to fight to uphold their law. They tried to do the same thing in other countries, and other countries just wouldn't allow it. They just didn't let it happen. They wouldn't let Monsanto sue the farmers. They wouldn't let Monsanto sue their own government. And they basically ran them out, which is what we need to do in this country. We've given them control, and now we need to take it back. And no one knows about these laws, and you won't see it on any television news. You won't read about it in the newspaper. You won't hear about it anywhere but places like this. Like I say, I've been fighting this law for 5 years since I first heard about it, and I have yet to meet a person other than a farmer that knew anything about it. Well, I try to educate everybody in Santa Rosa County. I talk to everybody that I can possibly talk to. Santa Rosa County is really educated, because I'll go anywhere that there's a microphone and 5 people. I'll go and tell people about it. What we need to do is everybody tell their neighbors and tell people that they know about this law. And don't listen to the facts that come from me. Google it, look it up, and read the law itself. And when I first read it, I thought, well, this is ridiculous. This will never pass. And it did. And they put in a provision called the Tester Amendment, which applies to small farms. Any farm making under $550,000 a year will be released from certain regulations within the law. But you have to apply for it, and then you have to fulfill those regulations on your own and keep meticulous records of it. They can come in at any time, demand to do a record check. If you don't have everything they want, they can close you down. But secondarily, the Tester Amendment doesn't cover the crops that you can grow. You still have to grow certified crops. You have to use certified fertilizer. You have to use pesticides. You have to use herbicides, and you have to use fungicides. They're going to do what they did to organic. A lot of people think that if they go to the grocery store and buy something that says organic, that it means that it was grown without chemicals. Unfortunately, since the USDA has taken over the certification of organic, that isn't what it means at all. What it means is there's certain chemicals that you can use to be organic. They also state that there are no GMOs in organic food. That's an outright lie. All of soy in the United States is altered by GMO plants, whether directly or indirectly through cross-pollination. There is no non-genetically altered soy left in the United States, nor is it. And when they say organic meat, that meat isn't organic because almost all commercial feed is made from genetically modified soy, corn, and millet. All of those are genetically altered plants, and that's what those chickens are eating, and that's what those cows are eating. When they say it's grass-fed, it doesn't mean that the grass is not a GMO. There's GMO grasses as well. There's also chemicals that they can apply to the ground to kill weeds but allow the grass to grow and still be called organic. And when they test that meat, it has that chemical in it. There's a new chemical that they're creating a new GMO for. It's called 2,4-D. And they're creating stackable plants that can be grown and sprayed with 2,4-D as well as Roundup. 2,4-D is a product of Dow Chemical, and anybody that was around in the 70s may remember 2,4-D by a different name. It was called Agent Orange, and it was sprayed heavily over South Vietnam to defoliate the jungles. It's exactly the same product that they're now using as an herbicide in GMO crops. There's a lot of people out there that got really, really sick from exposure to Agent Orange during the Vietnam War. They're still suffering from exposure, yet now the FDA has approved it to be put in our food. So instead of it being in contact with our skin, we're now ingesting it. That's a big problem for me, and I think it would be for most other people that knew about it, but the problem is no one knows about it. A lot of the chemicals that are in food you don't even know about. They don't have to be on the label. Another chemical I'm sure everybody's heard of is aspartame. It's an artificial sugar, and they found that it was a very strong carcinogen, and they also found that it caused kidney damage and liver damage. Right now, the United States Pediatric Association recommends that no child under the age of 10 years old have any, zero amount of aspartame. Well, because aspartame got such a bad name and was forced to be listed on the label of the products that they put it in, the company that invented aspartame, which happens to be Monsanto, took aspartame, added 2 more ingredients, one of which is on the list of top 5 most deadliest known chemicals to the EPA, and got it passed through the FDA as a food additive without it having to be listed on the label of the food that they put it in. It's in almost all diet sodas, and when you drink diet soda, you're drinking some of the deadliest chemicals known to man, and you're freely drinking it. If I was to come up to you and give you a bottle of 2,4-D and told you that it was herbicide and that it was a systemic herbicide and that it kills plants by preventing them from gathering or gaining nutrients, and asked you to drink it, would you drink it? No, I wouldn't either. But it's in every bit of food that you eat, whether it's meat, whether it's grain, or whether it's cereal. It's in the food that you eat. And we need to recognize that, and we need to have labeling that says that it's on it. Right now, there's a law in California that's going to be voted on in November for the GMO Labeling Act for the state of California. Monsanto has already spent about $24 billion in advertising in California to defeat the bill. There's an organization called Money Bomb. If you have access to a computer, look up Money Bomb, donate $1 to them. Any bit of money that they can gain to offset the advertising that the corporations are putting in California would be super, super helpful. Now, going back to my farm and to outlaw farming, what I do as part of outlaw farming is I'm absolutely refusing to comply to any regulations whatsoever by the FDA or by the government. I'm going to continue to grow food, and I'm going to continue to sell food exactly the way I do it now and the way I did it 5 years ago without regulation, and wait to see if they're going to come and arrest me. I would love to be the first guy put in jail for trafficking a controlled substance of tomatoes. I think it would be great. I think it would be great on my resume. So I'm waiting to be the first guy. And I advertise heavily that I absolutely will not conform to the FDA regulations and guidelines. I've been quoted on 2 or 3 different TV news shows. I've been quoted in most of the major newspapers in this area saying that. The only contact that I've ever had was from a county extension agent who wanted to know what the Food Safety Act is. These are people that are supposed to know. These are people that work within a county agency and are supposed to know what this is. When I explained what the Food Safety Act was to this person, they were absolutely amazed and stunned. They couldn't believe that a law like this had been passed. And they're the agriculture person for your county. They're the person that's supposed to know the laws and supposed to know the regulations for agriculture in the county. And they didn't even know about this law. Back to my farm, outlaw farming, part of what we do is we've cut back on growing and concentrated more on education. My goal as part of outlaw farming and the Outlaw Farmers Co-op is to teach every person to grow their own food. We've developed techniques where you can grow very simply and you can grow in large or small amounts and just produce 30% of your food, and that's 30% that you're going to take away from the corporation's profit. And it's also 30% of healthier food that you're going to be able to eat. and be able to stay away from GMOs. And we've done it in ways that it costs you absolutely nothing to do it. It's free gardening. We have programs that can teach you how to grow with almost no effort whatsoever. No weeding, no watering, nothing. You just put the plants in the ground and pick them. It's that simple. Another part of what, pardon me?
When did they meet? When do y'all meet? Where do we learn about that? Where do y'all meet?
You can go to our website or to our Facebook page. There's information there on when the classes are. We just started classes on Saturday mornings, and it's a repeat class of container gardening. As part of that class, it's a 5-class series. Last week we did an overview of what container gardening is and how you can do it on a small scale or a large scale. The next week, this coming Saturday, we're going to cover picking the type of container you want to use. There's many different ways to grow in containers. One of the most popular ways that people think is really cool that we do is we use recycled tires. We have a garden that's called our recycled garden. Everything in the garden came from a landfill or was recycled from a company. Growing inside of tires. Tires are an instant, forever container. They never break down. They never biodegrade. They're there forever. They help warm the soil up. They help keep bugs out. The biggest question that people have about using tires is leaching of chemicals out of the tire into the plants. When a tire's wore out, it's been on the road exposed to heat and cold. It's been exposed to rotation, and the rotation of the tires actually leaches the chemicals out and spreads them out on the road. So every study that I've seen shows that there's virtually no chemical leach from a used tire into dirt inside of it if you're using it as a container garden. Secondarily, we have minimal exposure the way we grow. We grow everything in our containers in 2 inches of dirt. We make all of our own soil, we make all our own soil amendments, we make all our own fertilizers. Our soil's so rich that all you need is 2 inches of dirt to grow anything in, except for root vegetables. You can't grow carrots in 2 inches of dirt. You run out of room real quick, and you get short, fat carrots. So there's many ways to do it. It's not as complicated as many people will make you believe that it is. It's very easy to grow your own produce and produce your own vegetables, and especially seasonal vegetables. And if you can learn to eat seasonably, then you're going to be a much healthier person if you just eat what's in season where you live. And if you grow most of your own, you'd be even healthier.
Grow my own.
Yeah, grow your own for sure. And as far as meat goes, we raise chickens. We started 3 years ago raising chickens and eggs for myself to eat, and we sell eggs as well. And we sell chicken illegally as well. And our chickens, what we do with our chickens was we started out with breeds that had been genetically altered, that had been raised for generations on antibiotics, steroids, and other medications to keep them alive. We've been in a breeding program for 4 years now, and it took 2.5 years to breed chickens that could sustain life without being medicated. We now have, and have for the past year, had chickens that can be hatched underneath a hen and survive on the ground without being given antibiotics or medication or medicated feed or steroids or anything to keep them alive. They can sustain their own life. So we also sell those chickens as chicks for people to raise on their own property. We sell them as adult chickens, so you can bring them home and get eggs from them and have really good eggs. If you've never eaten farm fresh eggs, try it sometime. It doesn't taste anything like store-bought, and it doesn't look like it either. And they're actually a lot lower in cholesterol as well, and they have no other chemicals in them, such as antibiotics and steroids, which transfer to the eggs from production farms that raise chickens for eggs. We're going to continue to do that, but we're going to expand our teaching program to cover raising chickens for eggs and raising chickens for meat. And next year we're going to start raising cattle for meat and for milk, and we will start selling raw milk, which is highly illegal at this point. There's lots of people that have gone to jail in the past 4 years for the interstate trafficking of a controlled substance being raw milk. If you drive from Alabama into Florida and you take milk from Alabama and sell it in Florida, you can be charged under exactly the same laws as cocaine trafficking, and you'll serve the same time as well. If you go on YouTube, there's a video of a gentleman that ran a health food store in Atlanta, and he brought raw milk to sell in his health food store in Atlanta from South Carolina. ATF raided his store in full riot gear with automatic weapons with 10 gallons of milk. They also confiscated his bank accounts, his house, his cars, his business, and all his property that was in the business because it was derived from an illegal enterprise, meaning selling raw milk. He's also serving 25 years in jail for it. It's the same as if you were selling cocaine or interstate trafficking of cocaine. Right now, milk and eggs are both considered controlled substances. Next year, produce will be considered a controlled substance. Not only produce, but the plants and the seed themselves. So if you have seeds or if you're saving seeds, hold on to them and save them from year to year, because after this, you're not going to be able to get them inside the United States. You have to mail order them from outside the country and not get caught with them. You can, under this law, you can grow in your own yard legally, but you cannot give that produce to your neighbor. If you give it away for free, it's exactly the same under this regulation and under this law. It's exactly the same punishment as selling it. So you can't say it's for a donation or it's free or it's a gift, because it's still illegal and it's still looked at the same way. Any questions? And I can't think of the person's name to attribute it to, but it says, the problem with our country is not civil disobedience, it's civil obedience. And that was one of the most profound things I've heard in the past few years. And I absolutely subscribe to that and have all my life. I mean, I've never paid attention to laws very much since the time I was about 10. I didn't like rules in school, I didn't like rules in high school, and I certainly didn't like rules from governments after that. So I pay very little attention to laws and follow my heart and my head. We all understand what's right and wrong, and we all understand how to live with each other and how to live in peace and happiness and harmony. And all we have to do is subscribe to that. It's that simple. Except society doesn't want to do that. It's only us, I guess.
We are society. Yeah, we are society.
And so with that statement, as far as the problem being civil obedience, we need to get everybody that we can to commit random senseless acts of disobedience. And if everybody did that, they couldn't put everybody in jail. And they'd definitely run out of space. And my theory is, if I have to be the first one, I'm more than happy to be the first one, and I'm sure there'll be more after me, but eventually they'll run out of room to house us, and they'll have to change their ways. The next is keep an eye out for legislation, both local and federal legislation, that has anything to do with agriculture, and try to educate yourself on it and educate your neighbors and see what it actually is. And it's really a power grab by large corporations to control our food. And if we recognize it as that, we can then try to reverse it.